Michelle, as most called her, Shelly Knotek, appeared to lead a charmed life. She had a caring husband by her side and was raising her 3 daughters in a home in rural Raymond, Washington. The couple were known for their selflessness and invited struggling friends and relatives to live with them. But then, those guests began to disappear. The first person to vanish while in Shelly Knotek's care was her old friend, Kathy Loreno. They had lived together in Knotek's home for 5 years before she disappeared in 1994. Knotek assured anyone who asked that Loreno had simply started a new life elsewhere. She said this when 2 other people vanished from her home as well. Finally, Shelly Knotek's 3 daughters bravely came forward with a harrowing tale. All 3 of them had been physically abused by their parents, and their houseguests had been killed. They said Knotek had starved, drugged, and tortured her victims, forced guests to jump off the roof, drenched their open wounds in bleach, and made them drink urine. Unspeakable horrors. But to get a better understanding, start from the beginning. Born on April 15, 1954, Shelly Knotek never strayed too far from her hometown of Raymond, Washington. The oldest of 3 siblings, Knotek and her brothers, lived with their mentally ill, alcoholic mother, Sharon, during their early years. Along with her propensity for alcohol, Sharon had gotten involved in a dangerous lifestyle, with some family members believing she may have been a prostitute. In any case, the home was far from stable. Then, when Shelly was 6, their mother seemingly abandoned them. Rather than caring for her younger brothers, however, she tormented them. The children then went to live with their father, Les Watson, and his new wife, Laura Stallings. Olson described Watson as a charismatic, successful business owner. Stallings as a stunning beauty representative of 1952 America. Shelly did not care for Stallings, and frequently told her stepmother how much she hated her. When Shelly was 13, Sharon Todd Watson died. As Les Watson described, Sharon was living with a man at the time. Instead, she continued to torment her brothers, blaming them for missing homework or picking frequent fights. It didn't help that her brother Paul couldn't control his impulses and lacked social skills. Her other brother, Chuck, never spoke for himself. Shelly did all the talking. But it went beyond mere childhood bickering, Stallings later said. She used to chop up bits of glass and put them in the bottom of the kids' boots and shoes. What kind of person does something like that? In March 1969, 14-year-old Shelly showed what she was truly capable of. She didn't come home from school. Panicked, Stallings and Watson called the school and were told that Shelly was at a juvenile detention center. Their worst fears, however, didn't come close to the reality. Shelly Knotek was not in trouble. She had accused her father of sexual assault. A doctor's examination later confirmed Stallings' suspicion Shelly lied about the assault. She was taken to multiple sessions with a psychologist, both on her own and with her family, but they proved to be unsuccessful. Shelly refused to accept that she was anything but innocent. Eventually, she went to live with Stallings' parents. But unfortunately, she continued to try and ruin the lives of those around her. Her tantrums continued. She offered to babysit the neighbors' children, only to barricade them in their rooms with heavy furniture. She even falsely accused her grandfather of abuse. Her pattern of manipulation and abuse continued into adulthood. Through 2 marriages, the birth of 2 daughters, Nikki and Sammy, and all the way up to the spring of 1982, when she met a construction worker and Navy veteran named David Knotek. 5 years later, in 1987, the couple married. The next year, Shelly Knotek welcomed her first victim into their home. Shelly Knotek's first victim moved into her home in 1988. He was her 13-year-old nephew, Shane Watson. Shane's father, a member in a biker gang, was in jail. His mother was destitute, unable to care for him. Knotek took to torturing Watson almost immediately. She dubbed her style of reprimanding him as wallowing, which she employed for things as negligible as going to the bathroom without asking. Wallowing involved ordering the boy and her daughters, for that matter, to stand outside naked in the cold while she dumped water on him. Shelly took additional pleasure in humiliating her eldest daughters, Nikki and Sammy, by ordering them to give her handfuls of their pubic hair. Their wallowing also frequently included being caged in a dog kennel. The only person in the home that Shelly didn't torture at the time was her infant daughter Tori. Unfortunately, that would later change. Meanwhile, she forced her nephew and Nikki to dance nakedly together as she laughed. After torturing her children and nephew, she would drop love bombs of utter affection on them. In December of 1988, only a few months after Shane moved into the home, Shelly opened her doors for another person in need, Kathy Loreno, an old friend who had lost her job. Shelly greeted her longtime friend as she greeted most people in life, warmly and positively. But Loreno would soon discover, as many others had before her, that Shelly Knotek's mask was quick to come off. Loreno quickly became another of Shelly's victims. But with nowhere else to go, she acquiesced to performing forced labor in the nude, being fed nightly sedatives, and sleeping next to the basement boiler. By this time, Loreno had lost more than 100 pounds. Her body was covered in bruises, cuts, and sores. After one particularly brutal beating, she was left unconscious in the basement. Shelly had gone, but David heard guttural noises coming from the laundry room. He found Kathy choking on her own vomit. When Michelle learned of Loreno's death, she convinced her spouse and kids that each of them would be incarcerated if they told outsiders. At his wife's command, David Knotek burned Loreno's corpse, and together he and Shelly scattered the ashes. If anyone asked, Shelly Knotek simply explained, Loreno had run off with her lover. Shane, however, recognized the true horrors in his environment. Which is why, in February 1995, he made a plan to get out. Shane had taken photos of Kathy while she was still alive, malnourished and beaten, living in a cold basement next to the radiator. He showed Nikki the photos and told her his plan: he was going to show the police. But Nikki, terrified of what might happen, told her mother about the photos. In retaliation, Shelly commanded David to shoot Shane in the head. He obliged. Like Loreno, the couple burned Shane's body in their yard and scattered his ashes over the water. The reason why my mom was able to control Dave was because while I love him, he's just a very weak man, Shelly Knotek reported. He has no backbone. He could have got happily married and been an amazing husband to somebody, because he really would have been, but instead, he just got his life ruined too. Before justice found them, the Knoteks took one more victim. Shelly Knotek's friend Ron Woodworth, who moved in 1999. Like the others, it didn't take long for the abuse to start. Woodworth was a 57-year-old gay veteran with a drug problem, an ugly lowlife, Shelly would tell him, who could use a steady diet of pills and beatings to get his life together. Shelly didn't allow him to use the bathroom, so he was instead forced to go outside. Then, in 2002, Shelly Knotek also took over the care of James McGlintock, an 81-year-old retired merchant crewman who had reportedly willed Knotek his $140,000 estate once his black lab, Sissy, died. Perhaps coincidentally, perhaps not, McGlintock died from a head wound he allegedly suffered after falling in his home. Police, however, were never able to officially link Knotek to his death. Back at her home, Knotek demanded that Woodworth cut ties with his family, forced him to drink his own urine, then ordered him to jump off the roof. He didn't die from the two-story fall, but it left him badly injured. As a treatment, Knotek poured bleach over his wounds. In August 2003, Woodworth succumbed to the torture and died. Shelly Knotek hid Woodworth's corpse in the freezer, telling his friends that he had gotten a job in Tacoma. David Knotek eventually buried him in their yard. But it was Woodworth's disappearance that led now 14-year-old Tori to realize what was really happening in her home. Her older sisters had moved out by this time, but when Tori told them what she believed had happened, they urged her to gather Woodworth's belongings so they could make their case to the authorities. She did. Police investigated the Knotek property in 2003 and found Woodworth's buried body. David and Shelly Knotek were arrested on August 8 of that year, while Tori Knotek was placed in her sister Sammy's custody. David Knotek confessed to shooting Watson and burying Woodworth 5 months later. He was charged with second-degree murder for shooting Watson. He served 13 years. Michelle Knotek, meanwhile, was charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter for the deaths of Loreno and Woodworth, respectively. She was sentenced to just 22 years. It didn't take long for her family to begin fearing what might happen upon her eventual release. Nikki and Sammy are now in their mid-40s, living in Seattle. Tori, however, needed a change of scenery and moved to Colorado. In 2018, David Knotek was paroled and reached out to his daughters to ask for forgiveness. Sammy and Tori have gone on record saying that, despite everything, they do forgive their father, whom they consider to be just another of Michelle Knotek's victims. Nikki, however, did not accept her father's apology. For her, the abuse was unforgettable and unforgivable. Then, finally, after serving only 18 years, Shelly Knotek was released from the Washington Correction Center for Women in Gig Harbor on November 8, 2022, at the age of 68. Since then, Knotek has stayed under the radar, leaving the next chapter in her chilling story yet to be written. Let me know, what do you think of this case, and what case would you like to see next? Till next time.